Hey guys, this is Mike with another MLS updater, and today I'm going to be taking a dive into the LA Galaxy and look back at the season they've had, which ended in defeat to local rivals and the eventual MLS Cup champions LAFC in the playoffs earlier this year. A bit of an up and down season, some bright sparks, some disappointments, but we'll be talking with Alex Ruiz, who covers the side for the striker.com, and we'll be going into a bit of a dive into the year and a look ahead to 2023.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm here with Alex. Alex, how are you doing, buddy?
Hey Michael, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good. Thanks. Really good. I'm really glad you've got the time to come and have a bit of a chat about LA Galaxy with us. Before we get going, can you sort of let everyone know a bit about your experiences with the covering the club?
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be on here. Yeah, I'm the LA Galaxy beat writer for the striker.com. I've been covering the club extensively since around 2020. That's when I really started to follow on the players, transactions, everything going around within the club, things around the fan base as well. And yeah, this year definitely has been, I think, the most fun to cover. It's
Yeah.
been, a bit of a roller coaster ride, but that's what, makes it fun, especially when it comes to writing stories and detailing what's going on with the team.
Definitely, yeah. I can imagine it's such a big side in MLS, and to get the chance to be covering so much that seems to be going on with this club is incredible. It must be incredible for you. And let's kick off with the last game, if that's okay. El Trafico in the playoffs. It was absolutely crazy, especially how it all ended. How was it covering the game for you after like this long season, the game specifically, and what do LA Galaxy do? Like, what do they take from this at the end of it for planning for next year?
Yeah, I definitely agree. It was definitely a crazy game. Just the scene itself, it was midweek game, but the stadium was packed. It felt like everybody, the energy was all there in downtown LA. And both teams, went at it. I thought the Galaxy in the first half were the better team when it came to ball possession and being able to, I guess, kind of control the game at their own pace. LAFC would get a goal against their own play. I think it was Danny Buwanga was the one who scored. I wrote in the striker, kind of breaking down all the goals, but and that goal specifically, it's just Douglas Costa was just at the wrong place at the right time, and Bouanga just got the better of him physically there. And then you had Samuel Grandsir getting one back. The Galaxy were lucky because I forgot, I think it was Eddie Segura, the LAFC center back, didn't clear it away right, and it just landed at the
Mm,
feet of Grandsir, who put it away, and it was
yeah.
1.5. Yeah. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
definitely one of those games where you felt like, okay, this is going to be one of those high scoring games, and they definitely lived up to the hype in the second half. I think LAFC may have gone to 2-1. I don't know who. I think might have been Blanca again. But it was just just poor positioning and marking from the Galaxy on that one. They just lost the ball in their own half, and LAFC are going to punish you when that happens, especially considering the Galaxy don't really have that strong of a back line. And
mm,
then substitute Dejan Joveljic, who's been this guy who just comes off the bench and
yeah.
scores. He's been their savior in a couple of games and has really, one of the big reasons why they're in the playoffs. He picked up a lot of game winners or game time goals for them. He comes on and 90 seconds later with I think maybe his first touch, he scores a banger of a
Yeah,
goal.
exactly.
And you think, oh my gosh, he's going into extra time. And then, a poor penalty. The LA Galaxy center back Sega Koulibaly kind of, I think he might have panicked, kicks the ball away as he was kind of losing his leverage on one of the LFC attackers that were pressing him. And then that's when Chicho Arango's scores that goal. John
Yeah,
Juan, I think, makes a good save there, but Arango's just there to eat it all up. And it's
yeah.
just for him right there. And I think, it's a heartbreaker. And it was just, I think it may have been a good experience for the LA Galaxy in the grand scheme of things, in the way that Greg Van East talked about wanting to rebuild this team and get back to winning championships.
Yeah, because it's been a little while, hasn't it? But you mentioned there that it hasn't been the greatest of defenses for throughout the season. You've been sort of got caught up in the pack, really, wasn't it? When you're coming into chasing the playoffs, it was a bad 3-0 defeat to Vancouver, I think, quite late on in the season, and it just got you right in the middle of that group. And did you feel, despite some of these poor performances that's cropped up, did it still feel quite positive around LA Galaxy that it was always going to be? I mean, you went on to finish fourth, so it
Yeah.
went pretty well. But how was that sort of end to the season?
Yeah, I think so. If you want to kind of just talk about the defense, I mean, defensively, the Galaxy started off really good. I think they already matched their total of clean sheets just 10 games into the year. So defensively, they were doing well. And then, teams started to be able to break down this team a lot better. We saw some injuries and we saw just a dip in form of some players. And that's when, the alarm started going off around there. And, the Galaxy would go on to acquire Martin Caceres, who's a veteran
Yeah.
center back, played in Europe for a bunch of years. He's likely going to go to his fifth World Cup with Uruguay uh, this upcoming
Yeah.
uh, this upcoming winter in Qatar. And I
Yeah.
think they still had an offensive minded approach to the game. I got to talk to the goalkeeper Jonathan Bond in an article I wrote in the Striker, and he talked about how the way this team is built and constructed, they're going to put a lot of players forward, and they're going to give up goals, and he understands that, and he's I wouldn't say he's content with it, but he understands that this team has the offensive firepower to be able to outshoot a team and be able to outscore a team. And the Galaxy they really struggled in keeping clean sheets. Before the El Trafico game, just a couple days prior, in early October, they had gotten their first clean sheet since mid-July. So that was a big
Yeah.
accomplishment for the team. So defensively, you can tell like they're letting in goals, but at the same time, their offensive players and other players around the team were contributing and putting up goals and being able to get points for the LA Galaxy.
Yeah, and I was really impressed with you've obviously mentioned there that there's that sort of dip in form of some players when Caceres came in and changing the defense. It was really impressive though how well they dealt with Hani Mukhtar in the first round of the playoff games to completely nullify anything he had going forward. It was a surprise from someone who watches from outside of the team that they were able to do that so well. And was it surprising for you as well?
Yeah, I think so. It's very surprising. But I mean, also kind of considering Nashville really isn't, they're so reliant on
Yeah,
Mukhtar that, if you can just cancel him out. And I think he sustained an injury as well, which meant he wasn't playing at 100% during the game. But nonetheless, they were still able to contain him and basically take out all of Nashville's forwards and Mukhtar as well. Caceres and Koulibaly did a really good job of taking out Sapong and I think Teal Brumberry, who started the
yeah,
game. So they did a good job in taking those players out as well. But overall, it was just a really good performance defensively heading into that El Trafico that I think, it kind of brought in that positive momentum that like, hey, we could be the team that upsets the number one seed in our conference and, heading into their house. I think that was
yeah.
a good feeling and something necessary that the team needed to feel.
The Galaxy going forward here, and the shot is a good one. It's a screamer. Ricky Pooch, 2-2, right to the end.
You grabbed quite a lot of the headlines in the summer with the bringing in Ricky Pooch, who's turned out to be a brilliant signing for LA Galaxy. How was the excitement about his arrival for his young player coming over from Barcelona, and did what he'd done in this second half of the season, did it live up to what the expectations were?
Yeah, I think when it comes to talking about Ricky Push's impact in the second half of the season, the one word that I can definitely say, goes with that is revival. Like that's what it felt like for this
Yeah,
Galaxy team. Like, it felt like they just had another heartbeat again. And the fan base as well, having a young star come
yeah,
to the club when most of the fan bases were used to the Robbie Keanes, the Zlatan Ibrahimovic's, the David Beckham's, players who weren't in their prime, but still good enough to be one of the best players in the league. But this is a completely different situation. You have
mm,
a player who was touted as the next Iniesta in Barcelona. You have a player who, didn't really prove it in La Liga or in Barcelona, but you could still visibly see the talent when he was on the pitch.
yeah,
And, it feels like the fan base was, extremely excited to grow alongside Ricky Puig as well because he's still developing as a player. He's still 23 years old, very young, and he still
yeah,
has ambitions to go back to Europe. And I think that's a good thing. Being able to have that desire to want to go back to Europe is a good thing to have when you're a player, and I think a good thing that LA Galaxy fans want because, like I mentioned earlier, players like Zlatan and Robbie Keane, David Beckham, that's kind of what got MLS the retirement league kind of
yeah,
label on it. But this is completely different. You're having a player who's motivated, who wants to produce in MLS, win championships, and go back to Europe. And we've seen that in MLS the last couple of years, where they've been exporting a lot of players to a lot of the big top five
yeah,
leagues around the
exactly.
world. So I think, Puig has been able to, help the team well. He's been the best creator on the team. The one thing the LA guys were lagging since Greg Vanney took over in 2021 was the lack of having a definitive primary creator on the team. Victor Vasquez could do that, but he could only do that for so long. He's a bit on the older side and couldn't go 90 minutes. So he was very restrictive. Alongside, he had health issues. Efrain Alvarez, another young player who has playmaking qualities, he just couldn't show the consistency as a starter. And when Ricky Puig was available from Barcelona, the Galaxy were able to get him, and he completely transformed the team. Not only were they a lot better when it came to playing forward and being a more creative team, but it really helped get better chances for players like Javier Chicharito Hernandez, who is the team's leading goal scorer this year with 18 goals. Still not able to get much from young DP Kevin Cabral or the other designated player Douglas Costa. But we saw, contributions from Puig in goal. The other summer signing Gaston Brugman, who was phenomenal and really fit the system extremely well. Those two, Puig and Brugman, saved the Galaxy season. And I think, that's the reason why there's a lot of optimism heading into this next year.
Yeah, definitely. I really found the center of midfield was completely lifted, and it was really changed the way that the strikers were able to get in the game as well. Chicharito and Joveljic, they're not one of these players like a Jesus Ferreira who drops in and starts getting involved and creating and moves. They're the finishers in the team, aren't they? And Puig has obviously made a big difference, like you say. How frustrating has it been with Cabral and Douglas Costa, two big DPs that haven't been able to really I mean, I don't know if this is being overly harsh, but they just haven't been able to perform at the level that the players needed them.
You're completely right. I think when you have the designated player tag, there comes expectations with that, and there always will be, no matter what. Kevin Cabral, came from League Two in France. Like, there wasn't much known about him, but the Galaxy and Greg Vanney in the front office decided, it was a worthwhile investment to do that. He signed a 5-year contract in 2021, and the Galaxy weren't necessarily banking on him, developing as a player and breaking through and becoming one of the top players in the league. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened. He's regressed from his first year in the league, only scoring once in league play this season. And for Costa, I think like I said earlier, the Galaxy are known for big names, and that's who they're always going to be. They're going to want to get the big name. And Douglas Costa at one point in the world with Bayern Munich was one of the best wingers in the world. There's no doubt about it. There was something special about it. But over the years, injuries have piled up, off the field issues as well. It's just kind of led to his career kind of spiraling downwards. And, I think the Galaxy, I don't know how much they looked into that, considering his injury history the last couple of years. But, they decided it was the best decision. They had an open designated player spot to start the year. And Douglas Costa was the player that, collectively they decided that was the player that we want, that we think can elevate this team. And, aside from set pieces where he's been phenomenal at, on the pitch, being able to produce assists and score goals, you've gotten nothing from that in open play. And, there's been moments where, Douglas Costa, will do a little bit of a step over, he'll do some moves and stuff to try to make a defender look silly. But, that's not what wins you football games,
Exactly.
It's a very small element of the game when it comes to playing 11 versus 11. And I think, you saw a couple of moments where he could dominate games, but they were just moments, not a consistent run of games where you were like, okay, we can see why the Galaxy invested in this guy, and we can see how he elevates the team. There was just a couple of moments here and there throughout the season, but nothing concrete that makes you say or makes you want to be positive towards Douglas Costa for coming into next year. And I think, going back to Kevin Cabral, during the Galaxy's first home playoff game, this was the team's first home playoff game since 2016. It was the first time fans were able to see their team play and win the game.
Yeah.
But once Kevin Cabral came in as a substitute in the second half, the Galaxy fans were booing him, which is quite a rare, thing to see. Not only are they booing their own player, but this team is winning on the pitch, and they're doing a good job taking care of Nashville and the eventual MVP of the league. So it was quite surprising to, see that all 25,000 people in the stadium booing one of their own players. It was quite a rare scene. And I think, later in the week, Greg Vanney talked about it, kind of saying like, it's not what you want the fans to be doing, be a little bit more supportive. But at the same time, Vanney also understands why they have frustrations, because he's given many chances, but just can't put him in the back of the net for some reason. And I think, that's kind of, one of the things that's kind of shadowed the Galaxy is their inability to be able to have somebody else other than Chicharito score goals. And I think you kind of saw that a little bit in the playoffs as well.
Yeah, do you think then that if you hadn't have brought in Bruggeman and Puig into the midfield with the struggles that you're having out wide, would LA Galaxy have been in the playoffs without these two signings in the mid-season? Do you think they were so important that it was either top seven or bottom?
Oh yeah, they were definitely important players. They're the keystone pieces to this roster. I was doing a midfield breakdown in my article. I was talking about, just I think everybody who watches football can agree that the midfield is the most important part of the pitch. You need to get that right in order for your team to work well. And the midfield with Mark Delgado, he signing a trade,
Yeah.
excuse me, from Toronto. He's doing excellent. I've been on the Mark Delgado train for a while, and I've always talked highly of him when it comes to tweeting out his stats and just how good he is when it comes to the other midfielders across the league. And one of the other midfielders that they invested in 2021 in Ryan Raveloson, he was brought in to be a defensive midfielder. Turns out he can score goals and score
Yeah.
goals in incredible fashion, and he showed that in 2021. And I think Vanny got a little adventurous, wanted to move him as a box-to-box number 8. At times, made him want to go forward, crash the box when you can because he's an athletic, tall guy who can win headers. And for a part of this early part of this year, Raveloson could be seen almost playing as a second striker next to Chicharito at
Yeah.
times. Like he was really a confusing piece on the team. And I think once they decided to ship him to France and bring in Brugman and Puig, which was a bold call because they're messing with the midfield, they're messing with the chemistry there, and they're essentially just trying to start from scratch. But it worked out phenomenally. I mean, I'll
Yeah.
start with Brugman, being a defensive midfielder who's a deep line playmaker as well, who's used to getting a high volume of touches and passes going. That fits exactly what Greg Vanny wants to do because Greg Vanny wants to, play possession style of
Yeah.
football. He wants to be able to, outpossess the team, play in the opponent's half, and try to create chances through off the ball runs through your strikers or midfield or wingers. And Brugman did that excellently. He's great on the ball. He's able to get out of pressure well, and he's just solid defensive midfielder as well. I think ranks in one of the top 15% of midfielders for most tackles and interceptions per 90. And I think with Puig as well, having that possession based style, Puig fits that perfectly
Yeah.
because the Galaxy, fans have been asking for a number 10, right? A playmaking number 10, but Puig isn't that. He's just like an offensive minded number 8 when he's able to, kind of sit deep and, ping these through balls or long balls to other players forward. And, he has a motor, like he keeps moving all the time.
Yeah.
And I think Puig ended the year being the player who averages the most touches per match because he's always moving, he's always getting into good spots and always, connecting with other players, breaking down opponents. And I think that's an element of the game that was missing from the Galaxy to start the year that really made them struggle when it came to scoring goals and being able to be more of a threat offensively. And both those players, offensively and defensively, provided a lot more. And Puig especially provided such a big spark when it came to, that energy because you always see him smiling. He's a good looking man,
Yeah.
he's smiling, he's laughing. He's always having a good time on the field and off the field during trainings. He's always smiling and laughing with his teammates. And
Yeah.
you see that energy so infectious and so good when you're trying to come out of a bit of a slump in your season and try to be optimistic as you're on the outside looking in the playoffs as the Galaxy were at some point in the year. So I think those two definitely, without those two, the Galaxy don't make the playoffs. And I think if it wasn't for those two, I don't think Greg Vanny has a job, if I'm being honest.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, I completely agree with you. The way they've transformed this team and the way they just did it so quickly was like must have been so exciting to see for a Galaxy fan, especially like how quickly this went. And they say like, it's been interesting to see how Pooch has come in because he's not the Driussi or Hani Mukhtar type number 10. He's a completely different type, but it seems to work so well with the strikers that you have and the wide players you've got. You didn't need someone who was going to be maybe like going on these mazy runs and shooting from everywhere. You needed someone to combine everything, and he seems to be doing that really impressively. And it must be make it feel very positive going into 2023 when he's got like the off season now to get the whole squad together and like get together and organized and playing in the way that Greg Vanny wants. And
Galaxy desperate to hear a day on Jovic. Does he ice it or does he go for the corner? Jovic scores!
One of those key questions I think that's coming up for people like me watching how well Joveljic has been doing goals wise from minutes. How does he get Joveljic involved, or does he continue as a super sub as long as Chicharito's still here?
I'm glad you asked that because it's such a probably the biggest question heading into the off season, because the Galaxy for I think maybe the last month and a half have been heavily linked with Luis Suarez, the legendary Uruguayan striker who played for Barcelona, Liverpool. He's going to be a free agent in the winter. And I think, as that question looms over, you also have to think about Dejan Joveljic, because Chicharito, who is the current starting striker, he's signing for one more season.
Yeah.
This is essentially the last season on his deal. So we thought this last year was going to be it, but turns out the Galaxy, he met some performance-based objectives, and that automatically triggered a 1-year stay with the Galaxy. So he's going to be coming back. Dejan Joveljic, we saw really a good sample size, even though it was he scored, I think, 11 goals in less than 1,000 minutes played.
Yeah.
I think that's the best, rate per goal in MLS, and it's just surprising because he provides a similar profile as Chicharito, obviously a younger version of him.
Yeah.
But I think, in my opinion, I think Joveljic is just a better finisher than when it comes to Chicharito. I think, when you see the goal he scored against LAFC in the playoffs, like that was all him. That was, not a teammate setting him up in the right position. That was him taking a shot and pure skill, being able to bend it around the keeper like that. And, if I was the manager, if I was in charge of that, for me, that's enough to warrant having him being the starter over Chicharito, because Chicharito is essentially very dependent on the service he gets in the box and what others are able to do around him. He's not going to be the guy who can score from outside of the box. I don't think he's scored from outside of the box since arriving in MLS. So I think, Joveljic provides a little bit more on that end. So if I was Vanny, I'd try to implement or maybe work around maybe a 4-4-2 to get those players, all your best players on the field, because Joveljic is definitely one of the top 3-4 best players on this roster, but he doesn't start.
Yeah.
So I think this offseason, I think that's one of the goals where Van is going to, not necessarily try to switch it up completely, but I think try to look for ways to be able to fit it and kind of work it in a little bit more, because there's no denying Joveljic has this great talent to finish and, just be at the right place at the right time, like Chicharito. But the way Vanny plays with one striker, having 3 midfielders, that just what Vanny feels more comfortable with. I think in the times where he's played with, 2 midfielders or been a little bit low in that midfield, the Galaxy have been overrun by the opposition, and I think that's something that Vanny definitely is very concerned about, and the main reason why he doesn't want to sacrifice a midfielder for a striker, because he'd rather have that midfield control than have that all-out offense and attack, and those strikers who don't really have that defensive work rate to track back and do all those duties compared to the midfielders. So I think that's definitely something that's on Greg Vanny's mind, and once preseason comes around, I wouldn't be surprised if the Galaxy are playing games in a 4-4-2 and Dejan and Chicharito are starting together.
Poster battles. Pooch takes it down. Early ball, and it's a beautiful one. Chicharito's in. Chance to make it 2, and he does. The 2-star names for the LA Galaxy.
Yeah, I'll be really, really interested to see, because obviously at times he tried inventing like the wing back formation, and it just didn't really get working at all. It seemed like he had that idea of, I need to get these 2 on the pitch somehow. Can I try it like this? And you've got really good attacking fullbacks, Araujo and Edwards. They've been really exciting going forward. But I guess there's the question of, is Araujo going to be there next year again? He's had a great rise coming up through the academy. Is he someone that you're expecting to see moving away and having to make changes in that area of the pitch?
I think I could see him moving away, though I'm not sure. I think the feeling is around the club that, he might be able to stay for 1 more year. I think if he would have made the roster for Mexico for the upcoming World Cup, maybe gotten a game there where he could have, showed off what he can do, I think he would definitely be gone and going to Europe. But at this moment, I'm not really sure. I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed for another season. He signed a contract extension in mid 2021. Locking him down until 2025. So he's got, a deal and money to stay here. But I feel like Araujo has shown what he can do, but there still needs to be work on his game when it comes to, tracking back and positioning. as well. There's definitely a lot of work there. There's been many times throughout the year where, I'm watching the game and, in the press box above, you can like see the coaches and the instructions they're giving out. And, a lot of times you can see Vanny just telling Araujo, get back, or, be aware of your position and where you're at on the pitch. And I think that's definitely something Araujo needs to work on before he heads to Europe, something that can definitely help his game completely and really help the Galaxy, because as we talked about earlier, their back line, isn't the best. And if they position themselves a little bit better and, do the bend and don't break approach when it comes to games, I think they could definitely, elevate their game and Araujo's game as well. I mean, we saw that FC Porto were interested in Julian Araujo. Fabrizio Romano reported that Barcelona were looking at him at one point in the year, and I think they'll definitely still keep their eye on him, considering, their current right back situation and injury crisis at the back, isn't the best at the moment. So I think, Araujo is definitely a player that's still on Barcelona's radar, but he's definitely a player that, won't be here in 2 years, a player that has his future in Europe. And I think, one of the best prospects for Mexico in their upcoming generation, because this is the last, World Cup for a lot of Mexico's older players. So I think Araujo and, the Edson Alvarez and other players of those caliber are going to, lead Mexico. And I think Araujo will play a crucial role in that.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see. I guess with so much time still on the deal, I guess it makes it a little bit more complicated for maybe some sides trying to sign him, whether a loan back if he did go in the in this period. But depending if it's Europe, because obviously the changes in the start and finish of the seasons. But looking at the season as a whole, then, as you before we look forward to 2023, do you come back now thinking it's been a positive season, the places where you've got to go in the playoffs, or is this still not seen as what LA Galaxy is about? It should be more.
Yeah, I think there's an element of that, but overall it's a positive, being able to finish the year a top 4 team, be able to get a home game in the playoffs, being able to, I think at the last stretch of games, be one of the teams that MLS clubs didn't want to face, the one club that kind of, had put some fear in other teams, something that the LA Galaxy, hasn't been able to do in such a long time. I think that's definitely a positive, and that's what a lot of the fan base is looking towards 2023. But at the same time, with the context of like, we're the LA Galaxy, we should be used to this, not, celebrating it. And also the added context of LAFC recently winning MLS Cup, fan base is hungry to win a championship, to want to show who, the real team of LA is, right? That's what they, you always see the banter on Twitter between the two fan bases, going at it. And I think, when you take that into account, there's optimism and there's definitely pride in how the season finished. But at the same time, you expect there to be more with the standards that the LA Galaxy have set in years prior. And I think, with how the season ended and how Greg Vanny and the club are approaching it, the leaders of the team, like they want to get back to that standard and be able to, lift an MLS Cup as soon as next season.
Yeah. Do you think that then the way that this season has finished, going out to LAFC, go on to win an MLS Cup and the new big rival in the city, is this giving an even bigger kick to the board and the club to say, right, 2023 has to be a much more successful year?
I think so. I think, the fan base was asking for that. They're tweeting, hoping the front office people are looking at what's going on with LAFC, how they're, I guess getting a hold of new fans in the city, who may not have followed football before, who are just getting into the sport. Like when usually those neutrals will choose the championship winner, a team that's always at the top of the table, and that's LAFC, and that's been LAFC, compared to the LA Galaxy in their 5 years of existence. And I think, just being able to have that rivalry, both I think helps the LA Galaxy, and I think their desires of having change in the front office, because it sets a standard in LA. Because before, the Galaxy used to have a monopoly on the city, like this was LA's team, but now with LAFC, you're seeing that competition, and you're seeing the success that you're, I guess, as they would say, your rivals are having. And I think that's definitely something that LA Galaxy fans, players, executives, people who are close to the club will definitely, hear about all the time, because, as a lot of LA Galaxy fans call them the noisy neighbors, they're going to talk to, whenever they see an LA Galaxy fan, they're going to tell them, you couldn't beat us in the playoffs. In 2 times, you couldn't beat us in the playoffs, and we beat you guys on road to a championship in the playoffs. And I think, that's going to leave a lot of desire and hunger to, be able to win for both the fan bases and the teams.
Yeah, I can imagine. But yeah, it's very difficult when the new team like comes through and starts growing and gets that momentum. It must be very frustrating for the fans. So putting that into context, what do you think the main priorities are going to be then preparing for next year? Are you anticipating a lot of moves amongst the roster, a lot of new faces? I think I looked through and you've got quite a number of sort of older players who coming to the end of their contracts who you'd imagine the majority won't be renewed. And I think there's Koulibaly and Williams, the centre backs. I'm not sure whether their options are being taken up next year as well. So what do you see them prioritizing and doing in this break?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of moves. I think the Galaxy right now are in a win now mode where they want to go all in and put all their chips in. I don't think Ricky Puig will be here following the 2023 season. The way he ended this past year, I think he's shown enough qualities that some European club is going to come and ask for him again. So I think this is the year where you have to go all out in. I wouldn't be surprised if the Galaxy try to move on from Kevin Cabral and Douglas Costa to free up, those designated player spots and be able to, bring some wingers who are known to be a little bit more lethal up top and be able to finish chances and create chances as well. So I think that's something that the Galaxy will never be their number one priority, is trying to replace those wingers who haven't been able to produce to ones who can contribute to the attack and create goals and not put all the burden on Chicharito. And I think also as well, just that back line as well, you mentioned Koulibaly, Williams, goalkeeper Jonathan Bond as well has a contract up, but they all have options. Martin Caceres, he has an option for this year as well.
Okay.
Signed for the remainder of this season, but I don't know if he's contemplating retirement. He's a bit on the older side. I think he might have just came to MLS to get fit for the upcoming World Cup. Possibly. So I think there's a lot of questions in that back line as well. I think fullbacks, you have it set with Araujo and Edwards. They have another backup fullback in Kelvin Leerdam, who's a bit more defensive minded, that can play if Araujo gets sold. But I think defensively, that's where a lot of the questions are going to be asked, and where we might see a lot of the movement and players move in and out there. The midfield is set. I don't think it's going to be touched. Maybe some of the older players who kind of lost their minutes, I don't think they'll be back. But I think you'll see investment in areas like in the wings and like in the center backs. But aside from that, I don't expect many other changes to key players. I think all of your core of players that you have, your Chicharitos, your Brugmans, your Delgados, the Ricky Puiges, I think those guys are set in stone that they will be back for 2023.
It's excellent. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see what happens after the World Cup with some of the new moves. They're obviously a club that does like a big signing as well, so it'll be interesting to see what they do on the back of this season. What's it like? Just curiosity, like what's it like amongst the city now? How is like soccer becoming much bigger now with the two rivalry with these two teams? How is it around the city as a sport?
LA has always been a soccer city. I mean, you have the Hispanic influence as well, where in Latin America, football is like the number one sport there. So you have that influence already. But I think, you're seeing a genuine rivalry in the city. When it comes to the other sports, MLB, NBA, NFL, there's no real rivalry between, because LA has two teams for each of the major sports, but there's no real rivalry between the fan bases. I mean, the Dodgers own LA, the Lakers have LA, the Rams have LA, and those teams rarely face each other. The two teams from other conferences, from the other sports. But LA Galaxy and LAFC is really something special because the two teams absolutely do not like each other's fan bases. Both teams are like full of quality, to where you're always going to get these electric games. Both fan bases are electric as well. So you always kind of this result of where, it's just such a special match and occasion that you don't want to miss. And the El Tráficos are becoming a don't miss event in LA every single year. And next year, you're going to have the first game of the new season is going to be in El Tráfico in the Rose Bowl, which can fit over 90,000 people. So I think we could see, the biggest, MLS attendance record be broken this year again. So I think that's definitely a spectacle that LA fans don't want to miss out.
I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great way to kick off a season. Like to do that is a good bit of planning by MLS with that one, I think. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Really enjoyed having a little look back at what's happened and sort of ideas from next. So can you remind everyone maybe where they can find you on Twitter and remind them where you're writing for? any LA
Yeah.
Galaxy news?
Yeah, you can find my content on thestriker.com. We cover a various amount of MLS clubs in US. We're going to be covering the upcoming World Cup as well, so I'll still be writing about that. You can find me on Twitter at ALXRUIZ15. That's where you can, I post a lot of stats about players, team news, everything you need to know about the LA Galaxy, all on my Twitter account. And yeah, that's where you guys can get a lot of my content and be well informed about the LA Galaxy.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll let you get back to your day and look forward to a World Cup and an off season with plenty of work.
For sure, it's my pleasure.
That's brilliant. Thank you again, Alex. That was a great way to get a little bit more information on LA Galaxy. A recap of the season. Pooch has been a big signing, as you said, along with Brugman. It'll be really interesting to see what happens to these wingers and how does Greg Varney get Joveljic alongside Chicharito a bit more. Lots of questions. They're a club that like a big signing, so this off-season will no doubt be very interesting with the LA Galaxy. You can follow me, guys, at Mike Rice 1983 on Twitter. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll be bringing you more in the lead up to the World Cup, especially with some season reviews from other clubs. Thanks very much for listening, guys. See you soon.